let's quickly start with the most trending issue of the minimum wage, and I would like to take your view on the current minimum wage also, and how you think it will affect the economy and how it has been affecting the economy so far.
Well, let me start by saying it's a good thing that common sense prevailed and the strike was called off, because when you look at the cost of a strike to the nation and to us who are in manufacturing, one day's non-production is of a massive loss. So I want to congratulate the government and the NLC. The good thing is the NLC has been able to prove its point that we need to increase minimum wage. There's no need to debate that. It's a very obvious fact. My only worry is right now at the wage of 18,000, minimum wage of 18,000, state governments, the federal government is having issues paying salaries. Now that the drive is there to raise it, I just wonder what will follow. I pray that things improve and the worker deserves to be paid better. There's no doubt to that.
Let's hope that things actually improve, like you said. Now let's take us through what is happening in the manufacturing sector in Nigeria. For somebody who's hearing about manufacturing and knowing how much of importance and how key the manufacturing sector is, what is happening in that sector right now?
The manufacturing sector has gone through a lot and is still going through a lot. This is what I sleep and dream and I eat and all that. It's a big bother. The manufacturing environment in Nigeria is something that still needs a lot of work. You know the basic challenges every manufacturer would have. If we start enumerating, talk about financing, talk about power, talk about manpower, talk about competition that you have to face between yourself and other nations that produce similar goods, who find their goods find their way into Nigeria, having to compete with such things. It's been a big challenge. The manufacturing sector has been a big challenge. The government's policies of late have shown a good trend to say, okay, come back, do what you need to do, stay in manufacturing. But I must say, with all clarity, that it's a big bother. There's so much still that needs to be done.
You've made mention, you've quite stated the facts about the manufacturing sector and the problems. But let me draw your attention to the recent Ease of Doing Business report by World Bank. In the report, it showed that Nigeria moved up, because you mentioned power, it showed that Nigeria moved up in electricity supply to manufacturers. So you coming to say power is one of the problems we are having. So what was your take on the report? We showed that we dropped to 146 position, but in various indices, Nigeria has witnessed some rapid growth, especially in electricity supply. So you saying power is one of the problems?
That's very true. But what you should ask yourself is, if you move from a supply of say 20% to 30%, yes, you've increased. That's true. But the question is this, is it still enough? Today is the 6th in this new month. I've not produced at my factory for one day. My staff are all seated there. They are waiting. How do we produce? We produce maybe twice in a week. So that means in 30 days, I run the factory for 8 days.
8 days.
8 days, count the cost. And those 8 days I'll run for, the cost of me generating power for myself is so astronomical. If I give you figures, you will pity me and ask me how come I'm still in business. The only reason one has stayed in the business is because you've invested so much there. These are not things you can just take the machinery and go dump somewhere. You must find a way to make things work. Yes, there's been improvement in power supply. I mentioned in my opening statement that the government has done so much. One of the things they've done of late is to say, okay, provide power for clusters. But when you look at the cost, I actually went and I said, oh, this is a good idea. Let me see if I can buy into this. The requirement is serious. If you must take power as a cluster, somebody must take the initiative, and the minimum you can pay at the end of the month is 12 million naira. So it means you have to find a way to sell that power. They are willing to give the power now to clusters, which is a good thing. But it means you must aggregate your strengths. the way even the Land Use Act has been bastardized. You find a situation where it's not very commonplace to find industries all together as should be, except some very established clusters that you have. So yes, there's been improvement in power supply, but is it still enough? When you give me power for 4 to 5 hours in a day, and I have to wait another 3 days to see that 4 to 5 hours.
The question that comes to my mind, it's something that I've heard at different fora. It has to do with the fact that they say businessmen who are serious will want to overcome the challenge of power to ensure that they are in business. So when you say you produce 8 times in a month, somebody is saying this man is not a serious businessman. Is that really the issue, or what are the other things you're considering, probably looking at disposable income, or what in terms of what you produce and how much of turnover? Can that also be considered as one of the reasons why you can say you produce only 8 days probably in a month?
Now, it's not right to say it's not being serious as a businessman. When you've saved up 4, 5, 6 years of your life and you set up a business, your interest should be that that business operates day in, day out. Because the more you are able to operate, your turnover gets better, your profit increases. Producing the number of days we produce is not by choice. It's by circumstances. So what we do is we aggregate work. Because if you produce in trickles, you'll be spending so much to keep the factory running. It's not where you can say, okay, I just run one machine and I'm okay. There are things you must put in place. The peripherals, your compressor, your chiller, your UPS, everything consumes power. So if you put on all those machinery and you just run one machine for one production, it's like you taking your raw material and your little resources you're able to gather and throwing it down the drain. The challenge is majorly power. If the power was there, you can plan your production based on the availability of the power. So what we do, we target, we aggregate. This is the much we need to produce. And we look at, okay, this is what's going to cost us to produce. I give you an example. For me to manufacture, once I shut down, for me to start production, my lines must warm up for 5 hours, doing nothing, but just warming up to clear the lines, because I'm into extrusion. I manufacture CDs and DVDs. The lines must warm up and you must extrude and make sure you have a clean line. Now, I'll count that cost, 5 hours of doing nothing, and look at what it will cost me to now produce whatever I have. So I must aggregate. I look at, okay, I anticipate, it will surprise you to know that we have an idea of when power comes.
You have been in the business, so you calculate
what
it.
we do, we just look at it, okay, there's been no power for 2 days, or somehow they'll think about us and they'll give us power on, okay, Wednesday. So we'll target Wednesday. Use that power at least to do the warm-up. Because whether you like it or not, power is still cheaper than running diesel.
Yes.
You just make up your mind that once I get that power to warm up, then I go back to diesel. Once you do the diesel cost, my supplier, whenever he's calling me, I'm sure if he's watching now, he'll laugh. When he's calling me on phone, he says, Daddy, how are you? Daddy, how are you? I'm sure if I'm older than him, maybe a year or two, but I'm Daddy because I'm always giving him the money. Oh, Daddy, how are you? Oh, what are we bringing this week? Oh, we've not heard from you. Is he calling me because he loves me? He's not calling me because he really loves me, but because I've been consistent. But that's like me taking money and throwing it down the drain. That's why we plan our production. So it's even being a more serious manufacturer when you're able to plan your production based on the resources you have and the conditions that are available to you.
Okay, now let's go deeper into the manufacturing sector. The CBN, the CBN, that's the Statistics Department, in the PMI report for October. When you saw this report, we showed that we grew according to the report, they said we've grown at a very fast pace.
Yes.
What was your initial reaction to the report?
Well, what came to my mind quickly is this. Nigerians are very resilient people. We are resilient, we are focused in whatever we are doing. Yes, the conditions are beginning to improve. And when you also put it at the back of your mind, that if you've invested in a sector or in a particular process, whether you like it or not, at the end of the month, you must pay salaries. Once there's any sign of increase, you want to latch onto that. So indeed, the government is putting in effort. What I'm saying is the effort is not yielding enough result yet. Indeed, the PMI has grown, What are the indices they've used? The purchasing power of the industries,
Exactly.
your
Level of new order,
level of new
supply
order,
time,
yes,
employment rates.
good. Those things point to the fact that there's some kind of effort from government, and the manufacturers are trying to meet up to that. Just look at a scenario where the effort can now yield the kind of result desired. What do you think will happen? I was discussing with someone, I think yesterday or thereabouts, and we were talking about the simple fact that you have so much vices in the society today because the unemployment rate is massive. If manufacturers or other businesses have the right condition to run their businesses, a lot of persons will be off the street. The reason why that young man will think of stealing the battery from your car is because he's hungry. He's hungry. There's nothing for him to do. You tell him, oh, go to the site and go and work as a laborer and get something. And he goes to the site. One site that needs maybe 10 laborers. You have 20, 30 persons all queuing up that money. So whoever is going to select will look at the strongest of them all. So there's nothing to be done. There's nothing for people to earn their income. And that's why they are on the street all the time. The PMI rather, has increased. It's indicative that there's an effort from government, and the manufacturers are reciprocating to that effort. And if more is done from the side of the government and the conditions are better, the PMI will skyrocket further.
You just spoken on the issue of unemployment. For you, as somebody who is into manufacturing, tell us what is happening in terms of how much of people or unemployed people want to get into your own factory. How give us a realistic view of what is happening in terms of how much of people want to work in your office. Is it like, as it is?
Let me give you a very simple scenario. We've had people who have submitted their curriculum vitae, seeking employment with us. Some applications as old as 3 years. Interestingly, when we need to fill vacancies, when we call, because what we do first is to check whatever we have before we now make it up. You find such persons still tell you they are still looking for a job to do. It's worrisome. And I'm not exaggerating here. I'm telling you something that we've experienced. We've seen scenarios, we've called people who had applied 2 years, 3 years before, and they're still open to come pick up the job. Now, when they come like that, we look at what skills they have. The other side to what government is doing and what people need to do for themselves is that a lot of Nigerians are not employable. It's worrisome. We've seen graduates who come in and you give them a simple task. Just give us
A cover letter.
Just
Put something down.
Put something down. You see somebody say, excuse me. They pick their phones and they try to copy from their phones. Some can't even write their names. And you ask them, what school did you go to? What's your course of study? They'll tell you, and you'll be surprised that they have nothing to offer. So it's a two-way problem.